There we go. All right. So my name is Kodi Frost. I am an LRCC member here at the Squam Lakes Association. Just before we get started, just to let everyone know, I am recording this session today. So if you, for any reason, don't want you in the recording, you can go ahead, turn your camera off or change your name or whatever makes you feel comfortable. Today's session, we're going to go over 4 different sections about all getting ready for backpacking. And we can go ahead and leave room for questions at the end of each one. If you have a question about something on the screen, go ahead and chat it, or you can even unmute. At the end of the session, I'll try and leave a little bit of time so we can go over anything that we have, and then we'll wrap up and say goodbye. And hopefully everyone will head out on their first adventure or their next adventure. So for backpacking, I've broken it down kind of into 4 different steps. So the first thing you have to do, of course, is choosing your destination, choosing and then packing your gear, planning your food, packing that, and then getting ready and going out. So go over these. So where are you going? So for your first trip, it is somewhat overwhelming, I would say. There's so many options. There's so many places for you to go. And when you sit down and Google backpacking in my area, a million different things comes up. So these are some considerations to take. So first of all, picking a place that's close to home, especially for your first trip. You don't want to send yourself clear out into the middle of nowhere. You don't know where you are. You aren't familiar with the landscape. Being a place that's within like an hour or 2 driving distance is going to be funner, safer, more exciting in my opinion. Plus, getting to know your local area is a really cool way to become familiar with the outdoors that you are in and around all the time. Going with a group, it is a lot easier to split not only the responsibility of planning, but also split the weight, split the emotional labor, and figuring out some of the things that you have to figure out with a backpacking group is a lot easier, especially if somebody has been on a trip before. And then just a few miles round trip is fine. Like, you don't have to go out there and bust out 20 miles a day every single day on your first trip, or even ever if you don't want to. Some of my favorite backpacking trips have involved 6-mile days where we walk 6 miles and then hang out at camp all day. Maybe we go for a swim, we do something else exciting. So I super recommend considering lower mileage days. That said, aiming for some elevation gain is an awesome way to get to know the landscape a little bit better. So picking a trip that may be around here, especially, there's the 4,000 footers, and there's so many backpacking trips that involve hitting 1 or 2 of the peaks and then sleeping in shelters at night. So that's a really great way to see some views, but also catch some miles. Picking a well-traveled trail and well-established camp. Of course, we always want to follow leave no trace, so picking a well-established camp is super important. And then for your first few trips, it's easier to navigate on a trail that's regularly traveled and well-maintained. And then, of course, you're going to want to make sure there's water where you're going. I've been in the desert and we thought there was going to be water where we were going, and then there wasn't, and it's just not fun. It's not as exciting as you want it to be, or maybe it's a little too exciting. So to find a trail you're interested in, you're going to have to do some research, and you're going to have to ask yourself some questions. Do you need a permit? A lot of trails these days that are super overused are going to start moving towards permitting systems. And most of the time those permits are free or a couple of dollars, but you're going to have to get them beforehand. Do you need specialized equipment? Do you need to bring micro spikes because you're going to head up into higher elevation where there's going to be snow or other elements that you might need special equipment for? What type of campsites? I'm a West Coast girl. I grew up in Utah. The whole shelter system here on the East Coast is something that's brand new to me that I am learning about every single day. So are you going into a regular tent campsite? Are you going in and there's going to be a shelter there? Are you going in and there's going to be a full hut where there is a staff who are cooking and helping, and you have to reserve beforehand? So these are questions to ask. And then what type of year is the best to go? Obviously here in New England, we're going to want to go more summer, late spring, early fall, because those winter trips are going to be not as pleasant, especially in your first few backpacking trips. And then something called the ethic. You need to learn the ethic of the land you're on. So this is going to be considerations like how to use the bathroom. Are you going to be using cat holes? Are you going to be using wag bags to carry your waste out? Similarly, are you going to have to do a bear hang because that is the law, or are you going to have to carry a bear can? So things to become familiar with when you're heading out on this trip. And then finding a map. Never leave the house without a map. You got to have it with you. You got to know where you're going. There's a few different types of backpacking trails. So number one is a point to point. So basically here to there. You're going to park at one end, walk, and then get picked up at the other end, go back and pick up your car. An out and back trip. So you're going to head up, maybe you camp here at the end, and the next day you come back down. This is awesome for like finding peaks, that kind of thing. It's also nice because you don't have to arrange a shuttle for your car, unlike the point to point where you're going to start here and you're going to have to find a way back to your original starting place. And then, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No worries. And then the final type, which is my preferred kind, is the loop. So you're going to park here at the top, walk around, do an entire loop all the way around and make it back to your car. What I love about the loop is that you're never going to run into the same landscape. You're going to be seeing new views the whole time. Unlike the out and back, you're going to go out and then come back the same way. So you're going to see a lot of the same things. For finding these trips, this is something that is kind of difficult in everywhere and is becoming much more accessible these days. But when I started backpacking a few years ago, I would Google like backpacking trips in my area. And sometimes there just like was no information. So I have learned to use guidebooks. This is the guidebook that I picked up when I moved to New Hampshire. It is AMC's Best Backpacking in New England, a guide to 37 of the best multi-day trips from Maine to Connecticut. And it's great. It's going to have a write-up of every single, or like some of the major trails in the area. It's going to tell you what map to buy. It has basic trail descriptions, gear descriptions, elevation, mileage, how many days they suggest. So this is an awesome resource to pick up if you want to start backpacking or even just find one trip in the area. We also have this website, New England Waterfalls, where this screenshot here at the bottom is from. So it has the name of the trail, where it is, a rating out of 10. I don't know who's doing that rating, so it is kind of subjective. And then usage, and then a really brief description, and then of the trail, and then which maps you should buy further along. I'm going to go ahead and send out a resource list of this entire presentation. So it's going to have all the links, all the books, everything linked on it. So I'll send that out right after this presentation is over. So you don't have to worry about taking notes or trying to figure out where these are.
Great.
Another website, All Trails. All Trails is a good place to start. It's an app. They also have a live website. What's fun about All Trails is it is both a website with resources for finding trails, but it also has like a social media aspect to it. So people go on there and rate the trails, which is really nice, especially for hiking. Lately, people are going on there and saying, oh, the road closure is open now, so you can cut out that 6-mile road walk, which is really nice. Some common mistakes that happen when you are picking your first trail or your first few trails. Picking a route that's hard to navigate. It's not fun to get out and feel kind of unprepared or lost when you're out and about. That said, you want to pick something with a little bit of challenge. So again, that elevation gain or picking some higher mileages, something to keep yourself entertained. Another thing people often do is to not arrange a shuttle or a ride from the end of their trail. I have been in the situation where I went with somebody who planned a trip for us and we got to the end and he said, all right, now we have to walk back on the road all the way to our car. And that added an extra like 12 miles to our trip, which was just not what I wanted to do that day. I was very tired and I just wanted a burger so bad after my hard 4 days. Another thing, people adding too many miles, expecting too many miles in their day or not planning for enough miles. So So some people like to hit the ground running and they're like, yes, I'm gonna do 15-mile days every single day and I'm gonna crush and I'm gonna cruise. And you get out there and it's just not fun. Your feet hurt, you're tired, you're walking a long way. So consider, like I said, a lower mileage. However, other times people don't plan enough mileages in the day. I think an interesting one I ran into in college, I am minored in outdoor recreation. So a lot of my college finals were backpacking courses and kayaking courses. One of our groups, or one of my classes, was everyone had to plan a trip. And one of the guys planned a trip for 3 to 4 miles every day, which is about 2 or 3 hours of hiking if you're going pretty slow. So not enough hours, not enough miles in the day. So we're moving on to the gear section. Does anybody have any questions about the where to go section? All right, let's move on. So gear, so your base weight is how much your loaded pack weighs minus the consumables, so food, water, fuel. And the basic equation is the lighter your pack, the happier your back is going to be. That said, let's go over it. So the 10 essentials of hiking are navigation, headlamp, sun protection, a first aid kit, knife, shelter, fire, food, water, and extra layers. And we are going to build our entire backpacking setup off of these 10 items. So these are what should be in your pack when you go out for a day hike or a entire hike of the Pacific Crest Trail or the Appalachian Trail. So starting out with your big 3, so I say the big 3 plus because this is more than 3 items. The first thing is going to be your backpack, of course. You want a well-fitting backpack. You want something that will hold all of your stuff. So for me, my backpack is the last thing I pick out. I'm going to find all of my other gear and then I'm going to find a backpack that's big enough for all of my stuff to fit in. I want it to fit well around my waist, across my chest. And when I go to try it on, especially at the store, I'm going to wear it around for 15, 20 minutes to make sure there's no parts that are scraping or rubbing or pushing. I think I had my eyes a few years ago on a certain pack from Osprey, and I was just sure it was going to be the pack for me. And I finally went to an REI and I put it on and I wore it around for 15 minutes. And they had 2 wire hooks at the bottom that just rubbed on my lower back. And I almost had blisters by the time I left the store in 20 minutes. So I'm glad I hadn't purchased it and decided to go backpacking with it. And then of course, with your backpack, you're going to want a rain cover or a trash bag. So for me, I've never enjoyed putting a rain cover on my bag. I feel like it's kind of bulky and sometimes the rain still gets through. So I take a big trash compactor bag and just put it inside of my pack and then put all of my stuff inside of the trash bag so that I don't have to deal with rain walking down my back and getting into the pack. But that is definitely a personal preference. You're going to need a tent, of course, or some form of shelter. Some people are really into hammocks these days. Other people sleep with a tarp. That's definitely, again, a personal preference. Just know that before you go out, you should set up your tent a couple of times. And then a sleeping bag and a sleeping pad, of course. Again, personal preference. I like a colder bag, so I sleep super cold, so I always go for a 10 or 15 degree bag. Other people want to carry lighter sleeping bags, so they'll go 30 degrees. Something to keep in mind is that a sleeping bag's rating is actually a comfort level, or excuse me, a survival level, not a comfort level. So a 15 degree bag, you're going to be able to live at 15 degrees, but you're definitely going to be comfier at 20, 25 degrees. So that's always good to keep in mind, especially if you're going somewhere colder. Know that you're going to need to either get a colder bag or a liner or both. And then my favorite piece of equipment of all time are trekking poles. I think that trekking poles are the best things ever invented. So good. Pulling you up, keeping you balanced. You're not going to fall over if you have trekking poles in your hands. So your clothing is something that every backpacker, they have their own system set up. So for me, this is the breakdown, what you definitely need. You can always add, you can always take away. These are what I super suggest. So on your body, when you head out to the trail, you're going to need your underclothes, of course, a quick dry pant or shorts, up to you what those are. Some people like leggings, some people like swishy zip off pants, up to you. A sun shirt, I always say go for a sun shirt. Sun protection is big when you're outside, so that's going to be super helpful. I'm really into like the UPF hoodies these days that are like long sleeve with the thumb loop so that you can cover part of your hands and you're not going to sunburn the back of your hands also. A sun hat, so a baseball cap or a wide brim hat, always good. Socks, you're going to want merino wool or anything that's not cotton, because cotton is definitely going to rub you raw. It's not going to dry out quickly. It doesn't wick away moisture, so it's going to be an unpleasant thing pretty quickly. Hiking shoes, some people are a big hiking boot people are fans. I'm a fan of trail runners these days. I use an ultra trail runner with an insole just to protect my feet. They're a little bit lighter weight than a regular traditional hiking boot, but don't let anybody tell you that your choice of hiking shoes is wrong if you're comfortable in them. Like the backpack, I think when you go try on shoes, you should wear them around for 15 or 20 minutes. Try walking up some stairs in them. I like at REI, they have the like fake rocks things in their display area that you can hop around on. Hiking shoes are something that you should really take care in finding, because that's going to be your whole support system for the entire trail you're on. Like I said, trekking poles. And then in your backpack, you're going to bring your base layer tops and bottoms for night or for cooler days. A puffy, your fleece layer. So for my like warmth layers, I go my sun shirt, my fleece, my puffy, and then a rain jacket on top. And that's going to be the warmest situation possible. So that's what I put on at camp at night to keep myself super warm. Extra socks. You're always going to want extra socks for your bag. For me, I have a pair of socks that I wear during the day, a clean pair of socks that I put on the next day, and then a pair of socks that I keep in my sleeping bag because at night I want a clean, dry pair of socks. I think that's super helpful for keeping yourself warm. Extra underclothes, of course, and then your rain layers. I always bring a rain jacket. Rain pants are optional. Some people really love them and swear by them. Other people don't. Coming from out west where it almost never rains, I've never needed rain pants. Out here in the east, I think you need rain pants. All of my trips so far this year I have planned, I am bringing those along. Warm gloves. Some people will also bring a pair of sun gloves, but that's not super necessary, especially if you wear sunscreen on your hands and you have like shirt loop or thumb loops. And then a warm hat, a fleece hat, or a beanie, and then your sleep clothes. And sleep clothes are whatever dry clothes you want to bring. I always just sleep in my base layer and top and bottom, but some people want a separate thing to change into at night for routine. So that again is up to you. All right, your kitchen. Favorite part of backpacking is the food. So in your kitchen, you're going to need your backpacking stove and fuel. As you can see here, there are about 1 million backpacking stoves on the market. I think a great one to start out with is a stove system like this MSR wind burner or a jet boil system. They're super easy to cook in. They boil water super quickly. If you're going to be using dehydrated or freeze-dried food, these are awesome. If you want a little bit more intense cooking, these like little mini burners are really fun. That's what I use because I like to cook when I'm on the trail. I want to make eggs and I want to make pasta. Your pot to go with your backpacking setup or with your backpacking stove, and then a bowl and cup to eat out of. A spoon or spork. For me, I like a really long spoon that I can reach down into my bags with and get all the way to the bottom so I can scrape all that food out. A quick dry towel or bandana. This is what I use to scrub out my pot at night. So I'll eat my food out of my cup and then boil some water in it so it's cleaner, and then I scrub it out with my towel. And then a food storage system, so a bear can, a bear bag, or a food sack and rope to make a bear hang with. And then a knife, of course, to cut your food. And here I have an expert to talk about bear hangs because this is something I'm still getting the hang of also. So I'm just gonna play this video really quick.
Hey everybody, Will here.
Skip a little ahead.
The first thing you should be thinking about when hanging your food is locating a tree around 100 feet from your campsite or 300 feet in grizzly country. Ideally, you'll want to look for a limb that is 18 to 20 feet off the ground. Preferably, the limb should be about 4 inches in diameter or smaller to prevent it from being able to support a bear's weight. Next, fill the included rock sack with a rock and then attach the cord. Now simply toss the rock stack with the cord attached up and over the selected branch. Make sure all other camp members are not in the immediate direction of where you will be throwing the rock stack. You may consider securing the other end of the cord to help prevent it from becoming stuck in the tree. Once the throw is complete, remove the rock stack from the cord and then attach the cord to the included carabiner on the food bag. Before hoisting your bag, you'll want to make sure that you place all your food, trash, and any items with a scent into the roll top food bag. Next, hoist the bag up, making sure it's at least 6 feet from the tree's trunk, approximately 6 feet below the supporting branch, and at least 12 feet off the ground. Once the bag is at the appropriate height, you can tie the other end of the cord at a suitable anchor like a rock or another tree. Alternatively, you can use the PCT method. This method involves running the cord through the carabiner on the food bag and then pulling the bag all the way up to the selected branch. Next, at eye level, you'll attach a small stick or stake to the cord using a simple clove hitch. Once the stick or stake is attached, slowly let the food bag slide down until the stick or stake hits the carabiner, preventing the food bag from lowering any further. The food bag is now secure and can be left suspended overnight.
And now they're gonna try and sell you an expensive situation, which is just a piece of cord and a bag. So the bear hang is a super important thing to do. The likelihood of running into a bear that is going to take your food is pretty low. The thing you mostly have to worry about these days are tree bears. So those little guys like chipmunks, squirrels, mice, voles, they are much more excited about your food than you are. So hanging it up like that, it's almost impossible for a squirrel to get out there and chew into your bag. I have lost many a fig Newton to squirrels, so I try really hard not to do that. Moving on to your water situation, water bottles or a reservoir, so like a water bladder, Camelback, or water bottles to keep on the side of the pack. That is again a personal preference. I like water bottles just so I can track how much water I have more easily. A water filter or tabs to clean your water. Super suggest always filtering your water if you're picking it up out of a stream, even if you think it might be clean, you just don't know what's upriver of you. So there are lots of different types of water filtration systems. You have like squeeze style systems like the Sawyer and the Be Free. You have drop systems or tablets, and then you have gravity filters or pump filters. All of them are going to serve slightly different purposes, but they all do the same thing, which is to make the water safe from Giardia and other waterborne illnesses for you. So for me, I definitely prefer the Sawyer Squeeze or the Katadyn Be Free, just because they're lightweight, they don't take a lot of time, and I've gotten great use out of them. If you're backpacking with a large group, a gravity filter is a really awesome thing to include in your pack, just because you can filter a ton of water through them quickly. So gravity water filter hangs, you hang a bag of dirty water, goes through the tube, goes through a filter to a different water bladder down below. You can sometimes get them up to 5 liters, which is really great if you're backpacking with a group of 5 or 10 people. Pump filters are definitely a lot heavier and they're a lot more expensive, but they're nice if you're like doing like hunting trips or backcountry trips where you don't care so much about weight. And they definitely work really well, and they are going to last a little bit longer than a smaller Sawyer Squeeze or something like that. And then moving on to navigation, a map and compass, that is a prerequisite to going outdoors. You gotta have it. You gotta know how to use it, where you're going, really important. And then on top of that, a phone and an app with a map downloaded is a really easy thing to bring with you. I love navigating off of my phone. It's really easy, but it doesn't always work. Sometimes your GPS fails, sometimes your phone dies, sometimes you drop your phone in a lake, never for it to be seen again. So always having that map and compass as a backup is very important. You can always bring a GPS system with you. Definitely not a requisite to going outside though. In your health and hygiene kit, you're going to take toothbrush and toothpaste. Big important thing. I think it's really gross that some people go outside and don't brush their teeth for a week at a time. Your toilet kit is going to include your toilet paper, a trowel, and hand sanitizer. I like to keep it in like a opaque bag so nobody can see what's inside. So you're always going to be packing out your toilet paper, so I keep that in a separate pack, and then keep that all in a small little paper. And I have in that printout or that handout that I'm emailing out later, there's some really specific instructions in how to build your toilet kit to your specifications. Any menstrual products you might need, any medications you might need. I include sunglasses in this health and hygiene, although my sunglasses almost never leave my eyes or the chain around my neck when I'm outside. Sunscreen and lip balm, very, very important. Nothing is more miserable than being sunburnt in the backcountry. There's just nothing you can do about it. Bug spray, especially here in the East. This is my first season I've ever had to worry about ticks. So I'm thinking I'm going to become a bug spray aficionado myself as I go out into the backcountry this year. And then your first aid kit. And some people have a very intense first aid kit. Some people only have a few things in there. You can decide how to build that. There's lots of pre-built ones out there. Places like, I think it's called First Aid Medical is an amazing resource for all of the pre-built outdoor first aid kits. Moving on to personal items, like I mentioned on the where you go section, permits, if you need them, bring them with you. And some places, some localities are going to have more things like fire permits, other things like that that are important to bring with you. So just in case you run across a park ranger, you have all the necessary paperwork with you. Your wallet, of course, with any cash and cards you have. Always bring your ID and then your keys. Don't get locked out. And then for your tech, my phone always goes with me for pictures and for navigation. A headlamp, of course, this is a big one. You need to be able to see at night. And then a charger. So I'm a really big fan of these little Anchor portable chargers. I have one that I think charges my phone like 6 or 7 times, which is really nice when you're out in the backcountry, just so you have like the ability to charge your phone. I do keep my phone on airplane mode the entire time I'm out, but I like being able to take pictures and I like navigating off of it. And then if your headlamp is rechargeable, you can also charge it off of that. And then if your headlamp isn't rechargeable and you need extra batteries, make sure to bring those. And then some fun extras. So things like card games. Bananagrams is one of those things that I have played. I've never played it at home. I have played it 1,000 times on trails and kayaking trips. It's so fun. Other things, a day pack is really awesome if you're base camping, and we'll go over what base camping is in a little bit. Binoculars are something awesome to bring if you're into birding or into spotting wildlife. A camera, if you're a photographer, there's no reason to not bring a camera with you. A journal and pencil or reading materials. Camp shoes is something that's super fun and optional. After a long day of being in the same shoes all day, slipping into a nice comfy pair of Crocs can be really moralizing and can really bring your morale right up. Another thing I always bring is going to be earplugs. I have slept many a night in my tent next to somebody who snores super loud, or like 2 tents down, somebody's snoring super loud and you can hear them, and I personally can't sleep through that, so earplugs are always in there. I always bring headphones just in case. Sometimes if I'm backpacking by myself, I'll download a movie onto my phone so I can watch that at night. Pretty fun thing to do. Lightening the load. So things that I super suggest is to use a gear checklist. On the information I'll be sending out, I have a gear checklist from REI included on that. This is going to keep you from overpacking, and it is going to make sure that you remember everything. Things like, so you don't need to double up on things. Do you really need 4 different fleeces for 4 different days? Do you need 5 shirts for the 4 days you're going to be there? For me, I wear the same thing every single day of most trips, and you're going to smell a little funky because you're out in the backcountry, but that's okay. Everyone else does too. And if you are going with a group of people, share your load. I have a hiking partner back in Utah. We have backpacked probably 300 or 400 miles together. And we always share the tent, and we always share food items or certain food items. So I'll take the tent poles one day, she takes the tent, the next day we switch. It really lightens your load. It really boosts your morale. But on the other side of that, don't worry too much about it. What you get out there with is what you have, and you'll figure it out. So focus on having fun more than what you're bringing and what exactly each item weighs. So packing your pack, that is something that I think is a little mystifying the first few times you do it, because you're going, well, how does this all fit into this little teeny pack? And this is how. So like I said earlier, I always line my pack with a big trash bag, like a big compactor trash bag to keep the water out. Next, I'm gonna add anything in that I'm not gonna use until camp. So like my sleeping bag is gonna go in very first, because that's the very last thing I'm gonna pull out at the end of the day. And then sleep clothes can go down there. And if you are using an inflatable camping mat as opposed to a foam mat, you can go ahead and stuff that down in there as well. Your heaviest stuff is going to go against your back. So next I'm going to put in, generally I'll put in my food bag with all of the snacks that I'm going to eat for the day taken out. So the food bag goes in next. My water bladder is going to go down the back of my back. Most backpacks have a slot these days for your water bladder. And then your tent on top of that. So all that heavy stuff is getting carried by the strongest part of your back. And then on top of that, I'm going to stuff all of my extra clothes. You want your pack to be super tightly packed out so that things aren't like moving around in there. Because the second things start shifting, it's going to become super uncomfortable. So throwing like your fleeces, your puffy, your rain jacket down in there so that it's all packed nicely and evenly is going to be super, super helpful. On the brain of your pack, or the very top of your pack, that's where you're going to put your light things that you're going to need all day. So maybe your map, your headlamp, a bandana, your rain gear can go on top if you're going to see rain, sunscreen for sure, anything that you're going to be regularly accessing every time you take a break. And then here in the front of the pack, oftentimes people are going to have outer pockets. And this is for me where I put things that need to dry, like socks that have gotten wet. I'll stick those in the front so they can kind of lay out, dry in the sun. A bandana, any other lightweight things that you might need to access through the day or dry out. Common mistakes, ill-fitting gear. An uncomfortable backpack, like I mentioned, can ruin your entire trip. Shoes especially, like I mentioned earlier, you're going to want to go and try on your shoes and make sure that they fit well. I think that sometimes we run into this thing of the break-in myth, and some shoes certainly need to break in, and sometimes your feet need to break into your shoes. However, if you put on a pair of shoes and they're uncomfortable and a salesperson tells you, you just need to break them in, that just means the shoes don't fit correctly. You want something that feels good. And you might get a few blisters, but if you start out a trip with a pair of shoes that are uncomfortable, that's going to turn from a few blisters into a lot of major sores, and it's not going to be fun. Another mistake, making your pack too heavy. You don't need to bring an axe most of the time backpacking, especially in most places where you can't cut your own firewood or can't even have fires, depending on where you are. The first ever backpacking trip I took in my program, I'm pretty sure my pack weighed 45 pounds, and I was absolutely miserable the whole time. That was like over a third of my body weight at that point, which was just so uncomfortable. I am amazed that I've continued to backpack. Thankfully, I don't carry 45 pounds every time I go outside now. Conversely, not bringing anything fun. I think like I said, bananagrams is an awesome thing to throw in there, cards, something to keep you entertained at camp at night, because sometimes the sun goes down at 7 and you have a lot of hours before you want to go to bed. So before we move on to food, does anyone have any questions about gear?
Yeah, could you talk a little bit more about how you choose your stove? I'm currently looking to buy one and am trying to weigh my different options.
Yeah, for sure. So when I started backpacking, I was really lucky to work at a gear store, so I had options to go in there and try them. But a lot of stores like REI and other like local gear shops are actually doing like rental programs now. So that is a great way to go in and try different things. The main consideration is going to come when it comes to what type of food you want to make. So are you only boiling water and dumping it into freeze-dried stuff? Or do you want to make more intense meals where you're actually like cooking meals, like putting things in together, cooking ingredients? So if you're only going to be doing like freeze-dried meals, a backpacking stove system is an awesome thing. Like I said, the Jetboil is a great one. I think I have the Jetboil Whisper Light. There's the MSR Wind Burner. Those are great. They are super fuel efficient. They are going to be with that isopropyl butane, I think is what it's called. So little canisters of fuel, and they are super compact. With that, conversely, though, you're looking at like kind of a heftier price tag. Some of those are looking into the $110, $150, $200 route, which is a big price tag for something you don't use super often. Then on the other side of that is the MSR Pocket Rocket, which is what I use most of the time. They're really small. They're basically like a little burner. Like people use them when they are like doing catering at like weddings and stuff. You'll see them sometimes, or something similar to that. With that, you can use any size fuel thing, which is really nice. There's again that isobutane, whatever it's called, something along those lines. It's nice because you can use like a frying pan on those. You can use like little pots on those. So you have more options of what type of cooking utensils you're going to use. And you have a little bit more control over whether it's going to be a boil or like a simmer, which is really convenient. And those are going to be significantly less expensive. You're looking like, I think there's like smaller ones for like $20, $30 all the way up to like $50, $60. Those are also going to be a lot lighter weight than like a full-on Jetboil system. Some people do use still the Whisper Light, I think is what it's called by MSR, which is going to be that white alcohol stove. They're just a little bit more inconvenient. It's like there's a learning curve with them. And they're a little bit heavier, but they're also more inexpensive, and the fuel is refillable. So you just like bring like a thing of alcohol. Does that help you?
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, for sure. Anybody else? Awesome. Let's move on to food, my favorite part of backpacking. So when you are going out into the outdoor world, I super suggest always bringing foods that you enjoy with you. There is no reason to go out there and force yourself to eat an MRE because that's what you should eat when you're backpacking. No, I'm here to say that you should bring fresh food and things that you like. Bringing spices is a super big key thing to do. Bringing hot sauce, bringing soy sauce, things like that to spice up some otherwise boring foods is amazing. And then something that I super suggest is just practicing your meals ahead of time, especially if you're going to be making them yourself. Don't go out there unprepared because otherwise you're going to end up with like undercooked pasta or something out on the trail, and that's a huge bummer. Something conversely that I suggest you don't do is bring things like huge cans of food. One of the craziest things I've ever seen, I used to help like do shakedowns for Boy Scouts when they were going out on trail for their like 3-day, 10-mile adventures. And boy showed up with, I think probably 8 cans of food for every day. It was like 25 pounds of canned food that he was sticking in this backpack. And I was like, oh buddy, we can help. It doesn't have to be this hard. So depending on your trip, you're looking to get 25 to 4,500 calories per day. So in this photo I have from a 6-day trip I did a few years ago. I think each of these ended up being like 3,600 calories when I counted it all out. It's a lot of food. The factors you're looking at, how many days you're going to be out, what your mileage is, how much elevation. The more miles and the higher elevation you go, the more food you're going to need, basically. The harder you work, the more you're going to need to eat. Other things to consider, are you cooking as a group? In college, we would do like big, like everyone had to carry one meal for the trip for the group, and it would be like, I'm carrying beans and rice and veggies for tomorrow, and Benjamin is carrying like couscous and curry for the other day. So it was kind of nice because we could trade off, and each of us had a heavier item, and then we had our own like breakfasts and lunches. Also looking at what is your budget. Making my own meals here instead of buying like pre-made freeze-dried meals saved me so much money. But then I took all of that money and spent it on stuff like Pro Bars, which are, I don't know if you guys know that brand, but they're like $3 or $4 a bar, which is kind of expensive. Something else, when you're practicing your meals, you can learn how much fuel you're gonna need. In those little isobutane cans, the smallest ones are going to have about 45 minutes of burn time. So you need to know if your lentils are going to take 45 minutes each night. I suggest you don't take 45 minutes of cooking every single night. So before I go anywhere and I'm practicing my food, I'm going to make myself a table, something like this. So I have kind of a general idea of what food I'm going to bring for the day. So like my day one, I'm gonna eat breakfast before I head out on trail. For lunch, I'm gonna have a tortilla with an avocado and a bell pepper. For dinner, I'll have a rice and beans freeze-dried meal and a tortilla. Tortillas are awesome things to add in there for calories and can make anything taste better, I think. And then snack-wise, I'm gonna have a gel, 2 bars, and M&Ms. And then for dessert, I'll have a candy bar and hot chocolate at night. I think something that was my best discovery is that backpacking, if you eat warm food at night, it keeps you warm through the entire night while you're sleeping. So eating a big dessert right before you go to bed, this is the first time you have permission to eat dessert right before you go to bed. Different types of backpacking meals. Like I mentioned, there's freeze-dried store-bought meals. Probably everyone has seen the Mountain House brand. Those ones aren't my favorite personally, but here's some other options. I love Backpacker Pantry, and this pad thai is like amazing. I would eat this out here like for regular food if I had them. They come with little lime packets and sriracha in them, and so they're super fresh tasting. I'm really into these Good To Go's, and then Peak Refuel. They're a newer brand. They're based in Utah, and their food is really good. With these, things to consider is actually how many servings are in the bag. Some of these will say there are 2 servings, and what they mean by 2 servings is there's 2 200-calorie servings. So you don't necessarily want to split that with another person after you've hiked 10 miles in the day and you're really tired. But some of these, like I'm pretty sure some of these protein or these Peak Refuels are 2 servings that are like 2 1,000-calorie servings with 40 grams of protein each. And that's definitely actually 2 servings. You could definitely share that with another person and maybe 3 people. Another option is to home dehydrate or home freeze dry if you're lucky enough to have access to a freeze dryer. Dehydrate your ingredients separately and then combine them into meals together. So there's an initial investment of getting a freeze dryer or a dehydrator. But overall, if you're going to be backpacking a lot, it's going to be a lower cost situation. It's kind of fun too, because you can dehydrate all sorts of weird ingredients. Dehydrated sriracha is like one of my favorite things to add to meals because it kind of spices things up that otherwise might be boring. And then you're also going to have to package them yourself. So some people just package them in a Ziploc. I have found personally that if you use a vacuum sealer, the food is going to last a lot longer. And then you always have the option of combining store-bought ingredients. Most bulk grocery stores are closed right now, but once they come back together or open again with full bulk access, they always have so many weird, random freeze-dried and dehydrated items. Freeze-dried, refried beans kept me alive on many, many backpacking trips in college. So we're moving on to some of my favorite recipes for backcountry eating. Backcountry pad thai. This one's one of my favorites. I've eaten it on maybe every backpacking trip I've ever gone on. You're just going to take 2 packets of ramen, and then in a separate bag, you'll add a half cup of freeze-dried or dehydrated vegetables, a packet of peanut butter, those little like individual serving sizes of peanut butter, and then a lime packet and some sriracha. These lime packets are amazing for the backcountry. They make things taste so much fresher. I am a huge fan of them. And then you can also put them in your water if your water is tasting like not so great because you're drinking water out of a stream. So you're just gonna boil all the things, cook it down so it's all rehydrated, drain the extra water and add the lime and sriracha on top. And you can always add the ramen packets for more salt. Rice and beans, a classic. So for this, I added half a cup of instant rice and then half a cup of dehydrated beans, half a cup of dehydrated fajita veggies, and then spices to taste. And then I was also lucky to have some freeze-dried avocado and some freeze-dried salsa in there. Add that all together, figure out your ratios of water before you go out. So for me, it ended up being, for this packet, I needed to add 1.5 ratio of water to this. So I just put this into my pot and then covered it up with water. So it was about halfway more. Boiled it so it all started to rehydrate, kept it covered until it was finally rehydrated, and then ate it with tortillas. So super good. This curried cashew, couscous, lots of ingredients. Basically, you're gonna combine them all in separate bags, cook them down so it all rehydrates, and then add all of the extras on top, like golden raisins. These recipes are included in that handout also, so I will send them to you. I am running out of time, so I'm going kind of quickly. Extras, I always bring soy sauce packets. I always bring hot sauce packets. Salt and pepper is super great. I super recommend bringing an electrolyte powder or spray with you so you can add that to your water. You don't want to get dehydrated out in the backcountry, and this is going to be awesome for keeping you hydrated as well as covering up any taste of bad water. Even if you filter it, sometimes the water tastes not so great. Some common mistakes: not bringing enough food or bringing way too much. I think on that first backpacking trip I mentioned where I took 45 pounds, I'm pretty sure I brought like 4 days extra worth of food because I was like, what if I run out? What if I'm super hungry? You probably won't run out. Again, don't bring food you don't like, and don't bring cans of food. Does anyone have any questions on that? All right, let's go ahead and move on to the getting ready phase. Conditioning is a really important part before any backpacking trip. It seems simple, you're just walking and you're walking with weight on your back, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't train. Knees really need like a long time to get in shape for backpacking because adding that extra weight on your back does mean they're gonna have a lot more strain. So I hike a few times a week. And I start out with a day pack in the winter, and then as I move towards the summer months, I'm going to start getting heavier and heavier packs. So for me right now, I'm hiking the Vermont Long Trail in August and September. So I'm going to start weighing or like adding more weight to my packs on my recreational hikes, probably this week or next week. Another thing is practice using your poles. I think lots of people don't really understand that you're pulling yourself up with your trekking poles. To take some of the strain off of your back and knees. So practicing out on the trails, not just tip tapping them, but using them to like kind of pull yourself up. There are lots of YouTube videos on how to do that. Finding a campsite. So before you go out, I recommend checking out the trail. There's going to be almost every trail has established campsites. Know where they are on your map, and then have a backup plan. So like this guidebook has about 10 or so shelters per section. So when I'm planning a trip, I'm gonna go, well, this is the shelter I'd like to stop at, but if that one's full, I can always go on to the next one, which is a quarter of a mile down the trail. Another way to backpack that's super fun is base camping. So you're going to carry all your stuff into a central point, leave it all there, and then you're going to make trips out of that central point. So you can camp down here and then have your little day pack. So you can hike up to a peak and then come back down. And then the next day you can do a different peak and then come back down to your central space, which is really awesome for not having to carry all of your stuff the whole time. Then if somebody's really tired, they can stay at camp a day while you go out and hit your next peak. So super fun way to get outside and not have to lug your gear the whole time. Safety, so follow a checklist. Like I mentioned, make sure you have all your gear with you on that checklist. Take proper clothing. If you know it's gonna be rainy, make sure you bring rain gear. Make sure you bring rain gear even if you don't think it's gonna be rainy. Bring a first aid kit, of course. Every time you go out into the outdoors, you should have one with you. And then you're gonna wanna make sure to give somebody your float plan. We just got our boating licenses here at DSLA the other day, so that float plan is on my brain. But make sure you tell someone where you're going, how many days you're gonna be gone, when you intend to be back, and to give them the numbers of like local Forest Service and other people to call in case you don't come back on time. And then keep them in the loop if you decide to go out for longer. Store your food properly, do the bear hang, make sure you have bear safety in mind when you're carrying your food, and check the weather before you leave. Don't go out on a backpacking trip if there's crazy, crazy inclement weather coming. If there's the biggest snowstorm in the world heading your way, don't go. It's not worth it. You can always go another time, another week. Yeah. So just a plug for my fellow LRCC member, Mikey. He is doing a full Leave No Trace program on May 8th. So check out our website for more information on that. But what I have to say to you is follow Leave No Trace when you're in the backcountry. And then for more resources, this podcast just started a few weeks ago, but so far I've loved it. It talks about like all the like intricacies of getting ready to go on a backpacking trip. This book by Heather Bela Rockford, I think is how you say her name. It's really great. She seems like she really knows what she's doing, and she's super helpful in like every like basic step. And then the Backpacker's Field Manual is something that I used in college on all of my backpacking trips when I was taking courses on them. So lots of checklists in those, lots of things to help you out. And I've included those on that handout. And that is what I have for you. So does anyone have any questions today?
Perhaps you mentioned this in the beginning because I was a couple minutes late. How do you figure out how much water you need?
So that's a great question. For water, you're going to look at your trail, and most trails are going to have like, it's going to tell you where water crossings are, what like you need to worry about for water. On your bottle, you should always have 2 liters of water. And then if you see on your map that there's going to be a dry spell for 10, 15 miles or 5 miles or however long, you should camel up and make sure that you have enough. And I would say, for me, I'm comfortable with a liter every 2 to 3 miles. So if you have like no water for 10 miles, I would say bring like 4 or 5 liters of water. And that's going to come down to like how often you're in the backcountry, and you'll get used to, like, you'll figure out what water you need and how much you drink in the time. But on me, I always have at least 2 liters. Is that helpful?
Yeah, I do have one of the like water bladders. So I'm just trying to figure out how to best pack and supplement with however many extra bottles.
Yeah, for sure. So when I go out, if this helps, for me, I always hike with the smart water bottles. Like that's what I put all of my water into, because many water filters have the same twists as smart water bottles. And I'll bring 4 of those, and 1 will be my dirty water bottle to filter out of. So that's 3 liters. And then I always have 1 like Powerade bottle that's a liter. And that's gonna be what I put my like electrolytes into, so all of my bottles don't taste like cherry or whatever. And then I have a 2 or 3 liter water bladder that I keep in my pack all the time.
Cool. Yeah, I like having a bottle to pour out of and like be more accessible in addition to the bladders that are just good for volume.
Never drink water out of your filter water bottle. That is something I have seen lots of people mistake. No Giardia, please. Anything else? Natalia says, are Nalgene's not a good use of weight for water? If you like taking your Nalgene with you, you definitely can. I think they're kind of a heavier thing to take with you, and that's somewhere where I like to cut weight, but you definitely don't have to. I'm a huge Nalgene advocate, so. And they're definitely gonna hold up a little bit longer than plastic water bottles will. Awesome. That is time for the meeting. So anyone who wants to hop off is welcome to. I super thank you for coming, but I can definitely hang out and answer any more questions if you have them.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.